is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 466. My name is Marshall, one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line, 9-time Pro Tour Top 8 competitor, Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, you're back home, man.
Yeah, I certainly am. I was, for anyone who watched or listened to the broadcast, I was kind of sick. I still am, but but that I also was playing pretty sick, so I guess that balanced out.
You really were, and we have to talk about that, man. For people that don't watch the broadcast, Luis made his 9th Pro Tour Top 8, made it all the way to the finals, made it all the way to Game 5 of the finals, and then, God, you just got hit with some bad luck and had to mulligan to 4 and couldn't win that game. Dude, I have to, I commentated it. We talked about it after, but, how are you? That sucked so bad.
So I'm very happy with the fact that I got second at the Pro Tour. I mean, it's worth a lot of money, a bunch of pro points. It also, lets people know that I still kind of know what I'm talking about and can play Magic.
Oh, yeah. Big guy still got it. Uh-huh.
But second hurts more than any other finish. Right. So even though it's a better finish than 8th or 5th or 7th or whatever, because at this point I've actually gotten to experience all the ranges of the top 8 finishes, and the 2 second places now that I have, those are the ones that sting. So I lost in Game 5 to Nassif in Kyoto about a decade ago, and then of course just this last weekend to Andrew. And yeah, because when you're second, especially since I've again gone to Game 5 and every single time, it's you can feel it. You're just a game away. And when you lose in the quarters or the semis, you never really feel it that close because you have to win that whole match that you lost and another match or 2 matches. Mm-hmm. But so I obviously I'm disappointed about that, and nothing is really going to erase that, barring some Kai-esque run of winning a bunch in a row. Mm-hmm. But I also am very proud of my finish and happy with how I finished. So obviously, on balance, I'm overjoyed with the finish.
Yeah, a lot of people have asked me on Twitter and stuff what it was like for me to commentate that type of thing. And boy, I'll tell you, this is right up there. The 2 most stressful finals I've ever commentated were that one and the one that you and I did, which was the World Championship in 2016, the one that BBD won. Man, watch it. Commentating you specifically is very nerve-wracking, right? Because I have this weird thing in my head where I have to be a professional, right? I have to remember there's somebody sitting across, even though I'm rooting for you, right? You're one of my best friends. I want to see you win. But there's this really good dude, Andrew Ellenbogen, who's played his ass off the whole weekend, got himself into the finals against you. I can't imagine being in his seat and being great. I finally made it to PT top 8. I made it to the finals and I have to play against LSV. It's just it's a nightmare scenario for him. And he somehow, some way pulls it out and ends up winning the PT. So, it was a really weird on and off switch for me because I had to be a pro and I had to, get enthusiastic and really recognize the moment for somebody like Andrew. And then once it was over, I set my headset down, not very softly on the table. And I was just silent, cause I'm just I can't believe, how close you got and how it ended. So crazy weekend.
To not to speak for every single person who plays on the Pro Tour, of course, but honestly, the biggest reason a lot of us do this, the ultimate goal is to win the Pro Tour. That's why you test so hard. That's why you practice so much. It's not to win enough to qualify to play again. It's not to, get some good finishes and get platinum. It's to win the Pro Tour. That's the kind of the ultimate goal. And it's not to say that it's a failure if you didn't win, but that's what you're there for. And to come that close to it and then not quite get that. I mean, that's tough. I mean, that is one of the things you almost got to the thing, which honestly, that might be the goal, but obviously most people just don't even get to do it. I'm very lucky to have gotten to do that already.
Yeah, you're also pretty good at Magic still, it turns out. So great job, man. It was really fun to watch. And by the way, for those of you at home, if you didn't get a chance to watch, you should look it up and also watch Luis's semifinal too, because that was quite a ride. We may have a little more on that later on the show. All right, let's get into stuff. First things first, this show is brought to you by channelfireball.com. That is the place to go for all things Magic related on the internet. Whatever you need, they're going to have it. If you need singles, if you need sealed products, if you need supplies, they will have it at channelfireball.com. They've got fair prices. They get it shipped out to you quickly and they stand by their product. That's some of the reasons why we love them. On top of that, free content. Right on the front of the site, you can get free content from some of the best players in the world. And one of them's joining us on the show this time around. Yeah. So we've got a special guest on the show this week as well that I'll bring in right now. We've got returning guest Mike Sigrist. Mike, welcome back to the show.
Hey guys, what's up?
Oh, just had a little chat with Luis about the PT. How did your PT go, Mike?
10-6, pretty average, but
that's pretty good.
Locked me up for platinum for another quarter. So not unhappy, but definitely not happy about it. Just like Louis said, I want to win, but always have a chance.
Nice one. Yes, solid. And you bombed out Unlimited though, right? You didn't do well.
No, not quite.
Not quite.
That's one place I did better than Louise.
Yeah, how did you end up finishing in the drafts? You just swept it, right?
Yeah, we had 160. I had, I was lucky. Yeah, I was lucky enough to have a Dimir seat and an Izzet seat, and open some good cards, and got to execute.
Wow, nice job, dude. Anyway, so Mike's going to come on and talk to us about Guilds of Ravnica, about Limited in general, and we got some questions from our patrons for him as well. Also, the show is brought to you by you via the Patreon. You can check it out, patreon.com/limitedresources. We're giving away a playmat here. This one, I guess I better grab one. Hold on. Oh, what do I got here? All right, this one is... Ta-da, from the World Magic Cup in 2016, looks like. All right, so this one is going to go to Cameron Broadhead from Calgary, Alberta. Thank you, Cameron, for your support of the podcast. Cameron's a relatively new patron. Thank you for that as well. And we've got a few new ones lately, and I wanted to say thanks to everybody. Welcome aboard. And I'll get that shipped out to you at some point in the near future. All right, let's crack a pack, Siggy. We're going to let you kind of drive this crack a pack. You know, part of the reason why we like to have our friends and pros come on the show is to get different perspectives on, the format. And I want to hear how you kind of work your way through a pack. This one comes from Sam Allen. Thank you, Sam. You sure you're up for this pressure, Sig?
Oh, yeah. I can handle it.
All right, you can take it. All right. First card out of the gate is Unexplained Disappearance.
All right.
What do you think about that card?
Playable, definitely not something I'm looking to first pick, though. But
all right, playable but unexciting. All right, what about Cosmotronic Wave?
Yeah, definitely not a card I'm considering. Pick one, pack one, but yeah, it's a fine finisher for Boros.
Okay, Sworn Companions.
Yeah, I'm not looking at that at all.
Wow, you don't like these. I know you're particularly.
These cards are just cards you would never first pick, basically.
Right. Yeah, these are all in first pickable.
It's not like all those are playable cards, but
this next one's one that Siggy's a particular fan of. It's called Vicious Rumors.
That I believe is the worst card in the set.
Maybe on the short list. What about Crushing Canopy? Here's a card that looks like a sideboard card, but boy, I've main decked it quite a few times and been pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I'm fine main decking Crushing Canopy, the first copy anyways. Generally in Golgari, but because my Selesnya decks tend to be more aggressive or whatever, and I don't want like a situational card, but and Golgari is just weak to flyers occasionally. But yeah, it's definitely main deckable, but obviously I'm not first picking it.
Right. All right. How about this one? This is the best card I think of the bunch. It's Piston Fist Cyclops.
Yeah, it's solid. It's a hybrid card, but it's a little different than the other ones. Like a lot of the other hybrid cards, you can put into like 3 different guilds. But this one, like you're obviously not looking to put it in Boros because you want to be as aggressive as possible and not have creatures that can only attack sometimes. So but it is in the best guilds, which are the blue ones. So it's definitely the card I would take as of right now.
Okay, Siggy, what's your opinion of Piston Fist in Dimir?
I think it's fine. It's not exciting, but one of the things I'm looking to do with Dimir is just hold the ground. And it's sort of like a Death Toucher because it trades off for like a Rosemane Centaur or something like that. It can trade with basically any ground creature, so it's just a wall. It's Pitiless Gorgon or whatever that can attack not as often.
By the way, Pitiless Gorgon is our next card.
There we go.
Yeah. I would definitely take Cyclops over Pitiless Gorgon. But yeah, Pitiless Gorgon's fine. You can put it in, 3 different guilds. It's fine in Dimir, not great in Selesnya, and it's not great in Golgari, but I usually end up playing it anyways, just because it's just hard to fight through on the ground.
We got another hybrid card next, Siggy. It's Fresh Faced Recruit.
Okay, I'm still taking Piston Fizz Cyclops, but
Okay.
I like this in. It's basically just a Boros card. I don't like Is It Aggro as much as I like Is It Control, but you can play this in Is It Aggro, and it's, again, fine in Selesnya. So I still would just take Future Cyclops or Piston Fizz Cyclops. I always call it Future Cyclops because it's blue.
Yeah. Next card, highest power level of the ones we've had, but it's a gold card. It's Artful Takedown.
Yeah, definitely. I'm perfectly happy first picking Artful Takedown. It's just, in the debatably the best guild. I still struggle between Is It and Dimir. I kind of think Is It is the best guild, which is kind of different than what other people think. But Artful Takedown is definitely one of the higher power level commons, and I'm totally fine taking it first pick.
Luis, you like Artful Takedown?
I'm a big fan of Artful Takedown and Dimir. So I would not have a problem first picking that. It's also splashable in some Is It decks.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you just kind of end up Grixis control.
Or even Golgari.
Golgari too, yeah. Last common is Sumala Wood Shaper.
Yeah, that's a card that I liked it, or thought I would like it first, but now it's just gone down and down and down.
Yeah, me too.
It's just too slow, and the Selesnya decks can't really win on card advantage very often.
Yeah, that's one of those conditional cards too, or situational. And what I mean by that is like you have to know the context of the set, because on its surface, it's like a pretty good card, right? It's like a 2/1 body that gets you a card almost every time or most of the time, and that's kind of a card that we would normally like, but it just turns out it doesn't fit in the format very well. Oh God, this card! Every time I stream, they've been making me draft the 5-color or 4-color Gates deck, and every single time this card comes up, they try to make me pick it, and I'm just like, no. And it's Glaive of the Guild Pact.
Oh man, I think you actually like that card a little.
Yeah, I actually like Glaive of the Guild Pact in the green, like multicolored decks.
Golgari decks.
Yeah. The Golgari decks make sense. Like you put it on a rat or a cat, and I get it. Like that adds up to me. But I'm sitting here playing 4 or 5 color decks. They don't need a card that does nothing that only helps you win the game. Like late game power level, not the problem. It's surviving that long, right? So I think it's terrible in those decks if you happen to be drafting them. But then again, I don't think those decks are very good anyway. But I like it in the question I come up with is, okay, let's say I'm playing Golgari with the rats and cats. How many gates do I need? And how many gates do I actually want to play in these decks if I'm not playing a Glaive?
My number for Glaive is like 5 or 6, but you could probably get away with 4.
Yeah, I was going to say 5.
Yeah.
Okay. And do I want to play 5 or 6 gates in my Golgari deck?
Yeah.
If you're splashing, yeah. It's not a huge cost, I don't think. I think people overestimate how punishing tap lands are.
Yeah, who are these people with these perfect curves,
Not me. Every land I'm playing is coming in to play tapped and maybe even taking one with it. All right, but we're not, but Artful Takedown's way better than Stupid Glaive. Right?
Yeah. This is a card I'm looking to wheel, or like, you kind of know where you're at. If you're the one getting all the gates, you don't really need to prioritize this, right? Other people don't have gates.
Okay, now we have a real contender here. Beacon Bolt.
Oh, yeah. I love Beacon Bolt.
Oh, yeah.
This is just, murder with flashback to me. So I take this card extremely high. It's one of the better uncommons in the set, and I would take it over Artful Takedown.
You agree, Luis?
Totally.
Okay. Sprouting Renewals next. This has been kind of a flop as well. It's a 2 and a green sorcery with Convoke. You can get a 2/2 vigilance creature or destroy an artifact or enchantment.
Yeah, it's just the worst version of
card.
Yeah, it's just the worst version of Crushing Canopy.
Yeah, exactly. We have Is It Guildgate as our common and our rare. Can it knock Beacon Bolt off? No. Although, Luis, you have stories to tell about this card. It's Gruesome Menagerie.
Yeah, I had that card in my Dimir draft deck that went 3-0. And the card does some work. I actually had enhanced surveillance to go along with it. I never got to actually get that going, but it's pretty sick when you do, because I had a ton of surveil where you just like rip through your deck, finding Menagerie and get back 3 creatures. But as far as the actual Menagerie goes, it 1v1 game against Willie Edel, but it got countered against Sam Black when it would have won. So I also lost to it on day 1, actually.
Okay, so that's pretty high.
No, I think the card is good. It's not a card I'd first pick. Like, I took it in a situation where it was like mid-pack 2, where I had a bunch of 2s and 3s and a lot of surveil. That's the sort of place where I'm a lot more interested in it. I think early I would just take Beacon Bolt in a heartbeat. Beacon Bolt's so good.
Mm-hmm. Where are you at on Gruesome Menagerie, Siggy?
I think it's playable. It's like Louis said, I'm not going to first pick it and try to draft around it or anything. But if the situation arises where I have a couple of hired poisoners and stuff like that, and I can actually get a lot of value out of the card, then I'm perfectly happy taking it, 6th, 7th pick and putting it in my deck. But it's not like a draft around or anything like that.
Now, so we're all on the same page here, taking Beacon Bolt. Where do you want to go from here? What are the? You said you prefer the slower version of Izzet if you can get it, Siggy?
Yeah, definitely.
This thing is just perfect for it, right?
This is one of the reasons why having a card like this always be on, because this card can be just nothing. Like I've sat there with Beacon Bolts for with one instant of sorcery in my graveyard, and just been like, wow, I just need to churn through my deck more. But having the control version of the deck where you're just playing counter spells and removal spells, I'd take those cards higher when I have this and just try to be able to grind them out and use Jumpstart to eventually make them flood out, and you can just control the board.
Yeah, it's also splashable in Grixis. If you're like Dimir, splash red, and it's just efficient and not actual card advantage, but certainly high card quality.
Yeah, for sure.
It's essentially card advantage, but
unless you trade a land for a removal spell, which is worth a lot.
Yeah, that's a ton. Okay, let's get into a little bit of a chit chat here with Siggy. What stood out to you, Luis? You had a chance to do the limited meeting, what you talked about on the last episode of the show, and get an idea of what Siggy thinks about the format. What stood out to you?
So what stood out to me is how much you favor the blue guild. And look, I am someone who certainly does enjoy drafting blue. I drafted Dimir and Dimir, in the Pro Tour. Well, I guess one was Grixis. But during our limited meeting, as we talked, it just became so clear that you were going to end up in blue the vast majority of drafts. And I guess I kind of wanted you to walk through how you approach a draft, what you look for in the first couple of picks, and also what happens when blue actually isn't open.
So generally what I'm doing in the first few picks of the draft is I'm willing to take the most powerful card unless it's Selesnya, because if I take a Selesnya card, it's kind of hard to end up in blue in any capacity. And blue is just by so far the deepest colors in this draft format. And so if I open a pack with a Sure Assembly and a mediocre blue card, say a Capture Sphere, I'm just going to take Capture Sphere. I'm not going to try to I'm not going to try to mess around with the other thing and get there. But
now, wait a minute. How far can I push you on that scale?
Because that's
Sure
pretty far
Assembly is
already.
one thing. Yeah, but there's Tristani, there's March of the Multitudes.
Yeah, I would take those. Those are so that's way more powerful, I think, than a Sure Assembly. The thing is, you take an Assure Assembly, and then you're like, okay, I'm in Selesnya. Let's say I get a Luminous Bonds, and then I'm just taking mediocre creatures and Rosemane Centaurs the rest of the pack. And I know a lot of people really like Rosemane Centaur, but I just don't think that lines up that well.
Rosemane Centaur trades for Wishcoin Crab, which you get 7th pick, and
exactly.
It loses to Dowser of Lights, which you also get 7th pick.
And then Wall of
and that's their payoff.
Yeah, exactly. If you end up with a deck of all commons, that's Selesnya, you're not going anywhere. And so I try to avoid that because it won't let me splash blue or be in blue at all. So one of the picks that came up was I favored House Guild Mage over what's the name of the Boris Challenger. And people were questioning me now, Boris Challenger is a better card. And I'm like, yeah, I think it's slightly better, but I just think being in blue is worth more because this Boris Challenger is a great card and it's great on turn 2. As the game progresses, House Guild Mage gets better. And I just think that trying to steer your draft in a way that you're not going to be blue out of the gate is a mistake in this format. I think that being in all of the other non-blue guilds isn't worth sacrificing slight power level in the beginning of the draft.
How fast do you see the format being then?
I don't think it's not very fast. there's so many effective defensive measures in this format. Like Wishcoin Crab is pretty good at getting you, virtual card advantage by holding off 2 or 3 creatures, and then like Wall of Miss and, all the Death Touch creatures and all that stuff. Ideally, I just want to, lay the groundwork early with these cheap defensive creatures and then just be reactive the rest of the game and just close out with whatever I end up getting.
So I want to hear you. So, because the funny thing is that as I listen to you talk, this is what I do when I draft too, this format. And, you can watch my videos or the streams or whatever, and you'll see that when I'm not being forced to draft 5 colors, I'll do basically the same hierarchy that you do, Siggy. But I will draft Boros more. Like that Challenger pick, I would just take the Challenger. Like I'm fine if I get a good Boros deck. I'm like, that's great. But how do you reconcile this with not forcing, right? Because you're not the type of player to sit down and force something in a draft. Yet at the same time, this is a pretty strong preference, that you're expressing here. I mean, you're saying like, look, I really want to be on this kind of wedge of this pie, and I really just don't want to be on the other parts. But I mean, you know how it is. Sometimes the person that's passing to you is drafting, blue as well, and you just can't do it. So how do you balance that out?
Well, that's the thing. If someone passing you is drafting blue, it's not like a typical draft format where you can just go and draft white-black or something if you think they're blue-red. You can't do that. So like you just all the power is in the gold cards for the most part. So if you recognize that they're drafting blue and you can figure out they're drafting Dimir, you just move into Izzet, and then you start getting rewarded in Izzet cards. While they're in Dimir, the person with their rights in Golgari or Boros or something like that, you still get like you're looking at the colors like you're looking at the guilds like colors as opposed to the colors like colors. It's just it's just different in this format than it is in other formats. So being in blue, you will be sharing with the person you're right some of the blue commons, but it's really the gold cards you're looking for.
I see, and you won't be sharing those if you've
if you can correctly identify. Yeah.
This is not a feature, by the way, of the draft format, right? Like the thing that you're saying here, I agree with all of it. And I'm also kind of like, well, that's part of the cool part about drafting is that you can say, aha, you're in blue-red. I'm going to be in these, 2 not blue-red colors. And I'm going to really profit from that. And here you're kind of like, well, it doesn't, since we're so incentivized by the gold cards to be in these specific color pairs, as long as I'm not in your color pair, I'm fine with sharing one, even if I think it's the best. But like, that doesn't really allow you to be, kind of spread your wings and fly, right? As a drafter.
No, of course not. And if the guilds were better balanced, then you would try to completely avoid. But like, if you look at the commons of anything outside of like Dimir and Boros has like Skynet Legionnaire specifically, but Izzet and Dimir are just kind of deep in their guild cards, and the rest of them really aren't at common. So you just like, you're just going to end up, you get this, one good rare and one good uncommon, and then I'm just filling my deck with what I would consider filler.
Mm-hmm. You have Selesnya last?
I do, yeah. Actually, Boros isn't. So I think Boros is the 3rd best in my opinion, but I'm 4th. It's the guild I'm like least likely, the 4th least likely to be, or whatever. It's the 4th most likely guild I'd be in. I will draft Golgari before I draft Boros usually. Just because,
and that's a personal preference thing, or
it's just because I'm taking black cards early.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Siggy and I are kind of the same there, where Golgari is your Dimir backup plan, whereas Boros you kind of have to commit earlier.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I see. Yeah, and this goes to what you were talking about before, with passing cards like Challenger for cards like House Guildmage. You just end up in black more often because you're like the next pick. You're like, oh, I got this removal, dead weight. I'll take that.
Yeah, I'm just not going to take a white card that early because it's not attached to blue in any way.
Right.
Whereas the other, black is. So I might end up in Golgari.
I mean, you could take a blue card and then a white card. Seen it. It's happened before. The highest levels, it's happened. What about when it comes to, like, what would it take to get you to not do that? Right? Like, is it just like a super bomb or something like that you're just like, screw it. Okay, this card's just too good. Like, what if you open, Tajik or, God forbid, Aurelia? You're just taking it, right? Like, you're not.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Definitely. I'm not gonna mess around with that. I'm not gonna take like, a common removal spell over some of the better cards in the set. I just don't want like, I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of power to avoid what I consider a, really bad guild. I mean, it's not battle, green and battle.
Yeah, how much is the modifier here?
Yeah, well, it depends on which guild it is, I think, and how splashable the card is. For instance, Assure Assembly is a card you could play in Golgari, but it's not really a standout there. And I don't want to splash cards in Boros. So, like, as using that as an example, it's just like, I don't really, you could play it as a combat trick in Boros, it's fine, but you're not going to really splash the other half of it. And then you're just taking a decent combat trick over whatever, a good removal spell. So,
which you'd rather have,
yeah. So, yeah, it really depends on what guild it is and how splashable the card is. Like, I'm willing to take Izomi, pick one, back one, and just lock in on Golgari, or, not lock in, but
be willing to lock
in. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Where are you at on, like, Deadweight versus Deadly Visit if you don't have any in your deck yet?
Early in the draft, it's Deadly Visit for me, which was contrary to, I think, the rest of the team.
That was a pick of some controversy in our team meeting.
What was the consensus?
I don't even remember where you ended up, Luis.
I would take Deadweight. I find that the Dimir or Grixis decks tend to have a lot of things to do on 5, and Deadweight offers a kind of irreplaceable early play. That said, if I knew I was Golgari, if I'd first picked a Zoni, I would certainly take Deadly Visit over Deadweight.
Yeah.
Where are you at, Siggy? Because
that's kind of where I'm at, is that I think Deadly Visit is just better in Golgari, and I think that getting having the extra keyword surveil card can be fairly important in Dimir. So I just, err on that side. But later in the draft, if I don't have enough cheap stuff, and I just think Deadweight can be replaced by Hired Poisoner maybe more than other people do. I'm not really, if I can just gum up the ground, then I think you can usually end up getting enough removal to deal with the few flying creatures people have. So
yeah, I only, whenever I take a Deadweight, the only target in my mind that it's ever hit is a Sky Knight Legionnaire.
Yeah.
So
I'm just artful takedown on that thing and
moving on with your life. Yeah. Okay. So your ranking then is something like Dimir / Izzet, but maybe it might be Izzet and then Dimir, and then Golgari, Boros, and Selesnya.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather be Boros than Golgari, but I'm not willing to. Yeah, or I'm just not as likely to be there because I'm gonna the way my drafts are early. I just don't end up there that as often.
Huh. All right, Luis, did you have anything else for him about the limited meeting and stuff?
I think that what do you think is the most important thing to figure out about this format? What for you? It seems like that blue was head and shoulders above all the other colors. Is that normally how you approach formats in general, and does this format stand out at all in that regard?
So the reason I think blue specifically is better in this format is the counter spells in this format are much better than they normally are. The cheap cards aren't as high impact as they've been in other sets. Some of them are, but very few of them are. And it's easy to get the game into a state where you can just, play, a 15 turn game or whatever. And that usually means counterspells are going to be better. So the fact that these counterspells are just jammed into the set as, what would be filler, there's just more playables there. So you can just play this kind of instant speed game because a lot of the blue-based removal, Artful Takedown, Capture Sphere, Hypothesis, and just play incredibly well with the counterspells. You just get to control the game in any way you want, and you wait to see what creature they play and then decide if you want to counter it or use a removal spell on it. And you just get to navigate these really long games playing blue. Whereas Boros, something like that, you're kind of just looking at your opening hand and hoping it's good enough a lot of the times. And you don't have a way to, you don't have a way to control your draw steps like Surveil and even Jumpstart just prevents you from flooding out. And so it's just when the blue removal is as good as it is in other sets, it's just those are the draft formats where blue is generally the best.
It's weird I've been playing all of the counter spells, I don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah.
Normally I'm pretty picky on them. Normally I'm really like, if I'm going to put a counterspell in my deck, there's a reason, there's a strong, like I'm like really pretty cognizant of it and hesitant to do so. And now I'm just like, oh, sweet, another Disdainful Stroke. Get in there, buddy. And I'm just playing devious cover-ups and all this crazy stuff. And I don't even really think about it. I think another thing that pops up a lot for me, along the lines of what you were just saying about playing an instant speed, or the Guild Mages in the blue, but both of them have a very relevant activated ability that you can do if your opponent does not produce anything worthy of your removal spell or your counter spell. Drawing a card with League Guild Mage just feels busted. You're just like, I feel like if I'm stable on board and I can just be like, go and leave up, devious cover up or draw a card with Guild Mage, I'm just like so far ahead. And then, the Surveil 2 on the House Guild Mage ends up being pretty powerful from that stance as well.
Yeah, Whisper Agent plays a lot into that too.
Oh,
like
yeah.
And Flash Combat is just so much better than it looked.
It really is.
It's just it's much more effective of a threat than I thought it would be, and the keyword Surveil helps a lot, and so it allows you to just play this game where you can just navigate it, figure let some things through the cracks that you can deal with, and then whatever you can't, you just have a hard counter to deal with.
Now, I kind of view your basic game plan when it comes to limited as fitting into this really well, but maybe it's changed, or maybe my take on it's too simple or whatever. But when I think about how you draft, Siggy, I think of inevitability comes to mind, right? Like you'd like to be able to piece together a deck that if, I remember you saying once to me, like, I want to be able to flip over my deck and you flip over your deck and we both decide that I win, that like exactly. I have all of the bases covered and that kind of thing. This set, and especially the guilds that you're drafting in, it seemed to really play into it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is just what like old limited Magic was like. There was just so few cards that had high impact. And,
this is what it was like in the old days. Oh
yeah,
man,
all the games
now
are really long.
Bummed I missed out.
You used to just play a Troubled Healer on turn 6, and they could never kill you, and you could just go on from there.
Yeah, and obviously it's working for you as well, because you crushed it at the PT. Holy crap! Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, hey, I've got some questions from our listeners. Go ahead, Siggy.
Oh no, I was going to say this form. Even in Magic Online, I've done better in this format than I normally do. I normally do fine, but. Yeah, like I just have had a much higher win percentage than usual in this format. You
normally do fine by pro player standards. I think that our audience, if they saw your numbers, would be like, "Whoa!" Like they would really hope to do fine someday. I think is how that would go. I've got some questions from our listeners for you, and Luis, if you want to add on to any of these, or if there's any other topics that come to your mind, that you had, then you can feel free to put them in between. This one comes from Jonah, who says, at the risk of being sacrilegious, I have a question about constructed. Well, we'll let it fly, Jonah. When deciding on a list to submit, what separates the good list from the good enough list? As a follow-up, how do you balance preparing for both limited and constructed parts of the Pro Tour?
Okay, so good and good enough.
What's the difference? I'm not sure what Jonah means by that exact. I mean, you're just trying to take the best possible list that you see. Oh, it's that time, Siggy. Mike and I were on the line before, and I heard the clock go. I thought, oh, this is going to be good when it goes on the show.
I'm at my dad's house to get away from the girls, and the clock just fires off at midnight.
Love it. So we know what time it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just trying to find the best possible list, right? However you define that.
Yeah. So I can answer it a little bit in that, like, good enough is when I just haven't had enough time to prepare and, like talk to some friends and just basically come to some small conclusion. But like a great list would be one that I tuned myself. I know all the matchups. I know what's important, what's not important. So like, yeah, that's basically all I can say about good versus good enough. As far as limited and constructed for the Pro Tour, generally what I'm doing now is, now that the set's on Magic Online, like right even before the pre-release, I just get to it right away, and you kind of let the standard format develop a little bit before you start paying attention to it, unless you have like a brew that you really want to try or something like that. But you really don't know what you want to do in constructed until it's time to do it. So you don't know what decks you need to beat and all that stuff. So I basically just play like a wait and see game in constructed and just focus on limited up until that point.
I've always wondered about this too. I think it's a good question from Jonah, because one of the other things that comes to mind to me is like, there's this weird balancing act that you have to do, right? Like, for example, at the Pro Tour, the players play 3 rounds of draft and then 5 rounds of constructed on both the first and the second days of competition, meaning that just inherently speaking, there's 2 more rounds of constructed. Therefore, that should be more important, right? Like if you chose where to put your win percentage, it would be on the one that has 5 rounds and not the one that has 3. But at the same time, from my experience in the way that the Pro Tour works nowadays, is that people almost never break it in constructed, right? They'll get an edge. There's edges to be had, but it's very, very, very rare. Maybe once or twice in all the time I've been commentating the Pro Tour, has a team shown up and been like, oh crap, like this is next level. They found something. Otherwise, it feels like there's a bigger edge to be had in limited because there's such varied opinions. There's so much different level of how many drafts each team has done or what they consider good testing or what kind of data they're getting and what they base their results on, whether it's good sample size or not. It's all over the place. I'll talk to the teams beforehand just to get an idea, kind of a sample of compare where I'm at on the format, what I'm seeing versus what some of the teams see. And they'll tell me in confidence, or even if I'm lucky, I'll get to go to your guys' team meeting, a team limited meeting before. And it's like all over the map. People have all these different opinions, and I'll tell you what, they can't all be right. So there's some type of edge to be had. So how do you balance that out? I mean, it's just 5 rounds versus 3, but then also like if there's more edge to be had, maybe it's worth it to focus on those 3.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Obviously, the top 8 is always standard or modern if it's modern as well.
That part too. I forgot about that.
It's even more heavily weighted there. But yeah, I mean, you just do what you can. Like I said, it's really important. Like you said, there's no one breaking it anymore. So just knowing the metagame is important. So you kind of just have to be patient and see what's out there first, at least in my opinion. Obviously, there's some like brewers like, Matt Nass or Raptor or whatever who have the ability to just be like, look, guys, I broke it before, anyone's played a game, but it's still few and far between. So, yeah, I just play wait and see. And then like, I totally focus on constructed for the last week. I'm lucky to do 1 draft the week of the Pro Tour before the actual Pro Tour. This week I did none this past week.
But by that time, you feel like you've got it down pretty well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've just done so much in the first 2 weeks that it's like, I want to do a few in between, sprinkled in between just to stay fresh. But like that with combined with watching other people draft is just enough for me to keep it and then just focus completely on standard.
Yeah, the part that's funny is that if you're behind on limited, no one can really catch you up even if we talk about it a lot because a lot of limited is individual preparation. I find that the team meeting is helpful, or at least I hope it is helpful for other people as well. But limited is more of a solo activity where you can bounce ideas off and having a team helps in that regard. But honestly, there's no real substitute for just being in the queue a bunch, for just drafting a lot and just knowing how to play around all the tricks, not having like when your opponent attacks you with your Boros deck, you shouldn't be in a position where you're trying to remember what all the tricks are. You should almost be automatically playing around them.
Right, and of course.
And you don't get there unless you've practiced a lot. So that's kind of on you to do, whereas constructed is way more of a team exercise, and there's no eureka moment of like, aha, this deck's got it. I mean, sometimes it is. Like, look, when we found Cobblade, we knew instantly what we had. But most of the time, you just don't do that. 90% of the time, 99% of the time, it's like, you're agonizing over which deck to play, decide to play, okay, this deck's good enough, but you're never like, wow, this deck's just the stone nuts. We've totally got this. It just doesn't happen like that. And you just, at some point, have to pick your poison and pick a deck that you think you'll be competent with.
Yeah, we didn't even think Eldrazi was that bust. Like,
no,
I know we thought it was, we thought it was like fine, but we didn't think it was, as busted as it ended up being.
That was a pleasant surprise, right? That was like 2 rounds into the constructed. We're like, yeah, we haven't lost yet. This deck's probably busted.
I mean, that was the one I was thinking of when I said the few times that the team has actually broken it since I've been doing coverage. That's the number one. I mean, that one Pro Tour was just completely absurd, on that. It's funny that you guys didn't even know.
No, I had no idea. I mean,
William,
okay.
has a question for you. He says, what are some of the things you consider when deciding if board advantage or card advantage is more important in a given state? For example, when is it correct to 2-for-1 yourself to kill a 4/5? When is it better to cast divination over a removal spell, etc.? He says, I know Magic is super complex and nuanced, but what are the things you run through? What are the things that you run through in your head when making these types of decisions, and how do you evaluate them?
So inevitability is a good word that you used before, and that's kind of something I would get to in this. Like, so the closing speed of your opponent is when you should be deciding if you want to like try to just gain more cards, or like sometimes your opponent's deck will just they'll be hitting you with a 2/2 or a 3/2 a few times, but they really don't have much to back it up, right? They're like a control deck, and they're not going to press you a lot. So you can go to 5 and just start, to set up. But if you're playing against a Boros aggro deck, that's when you need to start worrying about, their board presence and really value gaining control of the board before you start firing off divinations or notion rains or whatever. So it's basically just judging how fast your opponent's and how fast and how reliably your opponent's going to be able to close out the game if you don't take steps to manage the board before you're, just trying to grind out an advantage in cards.
Okay. Luis, who's also, by the way, Man-O-War Elves, which great name, says in your article on most overrated cards in Guilds of Ravnica Limited, you placed Notion Rain at number 3, which I found quite surprising. I'd like to hear you expand on whether or not you still find that to be true, and I'd be curious to hear what Luis and Marshall think about the inclusion on the list. And Man-O-War Elves also says, thanks for all the great content.
Love a Notion Rain.
So the reason I have it there is because people seem to take it too highly, specifically in pack 1, because it definitely has diminishing returns. It's not a card I want to play 3 of in my deck. 2 is like pushing it, depending on, how easily I can take advantage of, or how easily I can manage the board early. Because again, I don't want to just cast a Notion Rain and then be playing catch up the rest of the game.
Right.
And I also don't want to be pondering if I want to cast a Notion Rain when I'm at 4 life or 5 life or whatever, if I want to play around a direct current or some other kind of direct damage. So it's basically just diminishing returns with Notion Rain. It's I don't want to fill my deck up with a bunch of divinations or whatever that are costing me life when I'm trying to play this really long game where I stabilize at 3 life. I have come up on it a little bit. I'm like, before I was like, I'm only playing 1 of this card. I don't need it. But since then, I've, it's like, yeah, I'll just play the second one, live dangerously, and it's been fine. Maybe it's because I'm getting less chemistry insights than I used to, and I need some other way to get some card advantage.
Well, it's important to note, right, that overrated does not mean bad.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
There's a subtlety to talking about cards in this way that can lead people to think that if you say it's overrated, you don't like it or you don't want one, and that's just that is just not a nuanced way to discuss cards. And even though I understand that like it can come off that way, that, just because you said it was overrated doesn't mean you think it's a bad Magic card.
I love Golgari too.
Oh yeah. It's really good there. You can actually gain life back.
Yes.
With Luis's other favorite card, the 4/4.
Yeah, he definitely overrates that card.
Yes, he's assembled the combo.
Yeah, I love the Crawl Forgers or whatever.
He's like, turn 3, surveil 2 creatures into my graveyard. Turn 5, gotcha, sucker. Free Notion Rain. Next comes from Thule, who says, hey guys, OG listener here. I actually started listening during SOM block. What was that? What was it? Shards? What was it called? Scars of Mirrodin? Yeah, Scars of Mirrodin block with Ryan. Wow, Thule, you go way back. Anyways, the question is for all of you. Early on in a format, I find myself relying heavily on the set reviews to make picks. I'd say I'm decent at card evaluation, but typically use LSV's written reviews as tiebreakers or to double check my evaluations during a draft or deck building. Am I holding myself back by doing this? And should I force myself to make picks all on my own? No, I don't think so. Like the point, for our set reviews is to give you a starting point, right? Like a valid beginning point and to help you navigate through what can sometimes be pitfalls. when it comes to these type of things, where, sometimes a card looks good, and then but if you haven't played with that type of card before, or you haven't really thought it through, you realize it's actually not that good. And some cards that don't look that good end up, holding a pretty important part in the metagame. And what we want to have you do before you walk into your pre-release or whatever, when you listen to the set review, is that you've navigated through all of those. Then the real work starts, right? That's where you have to actually start to figure out how the cards fit together in context, which ones are a little better than they looked, a little worse than they looked, and start adjusting things so that you can find some value where other people don't see it. And that's, I think, Thule, the part where you should be taking things more into your own hands, using your own experience and the experience of your friends, or watching streams or pro tours or whatever it is, to start to say, that Wishcoin Crab's actually performing much better than a 12th pick should, and start to notice, this is a card that I actually kind of want.
The only reason I don't get 12 pick Wishcoin Crabs is because I took them earlier already. It's not a pack anymore.
You can never wheel them if you take them the first time around. That's our new tagline on the podcast. This one, next question comes from Taylor, who says, "Gentlemen, in light of recent results at the Pro Tour, should changes be made to Mulligan rules?" Thanks for all you do. Great question, Taylor. What do you guys think? Should we ever have a Pro Tour end on a Mulligan to 4 again, or what?
I don't know. That's part of what I signed up for. I don't see a particular need to change the Mulligan rules.
But the last time we changed it, we loved it.
It's true, but I don't think that there's a burning need to do that. Like, I haven't seen any rules which I thought were great. Some people have been talking, if you go from 6 to 6 and then to 5, maybe that would be okay.
What do you think about that, Siggy? What if I could let you Mulligan from 7 to 6 to 6 and then and then go down after that?
Do I get to play against Joel again? No. All right. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like the idea of 6 to 6, but it does kind of, I don't really like to look at older formats as a reason to do things, but it does kind of make that worse. I'm fine with it as it is. The other thing you could do is you go 6 to 6 and no scry or something like that. And make it a little more punishing, because just like being able to aggressively mulligan like that kind of changes the game in a way that I don't know. I don't know if it would have that big of an impact, or if it would be just like a disaster where everyone's mulliganing a bunch and then it adds shuffling and everything slows down a lot. I don't know. I'm fine with it as it is.
Did you like the change when they made the scry rule?
Yeah. I thought it was great. It did give like aggressive decks and decks that can function on lower resources a little bit of an advantage, but it wasn't enough to like change things dramatically, like potentially getting a free mulligan would.
Mm-hmm. Dan says, "Hi, Marshall, LSV, and Mike. I noticed in the feature pod at the Pro Tour on day 2 that Boros was overvalued there." Oh, that's an understatement, Dan.
Boros had the most 3-0s, by the way.
Yeah.
I discussed this with Marshall a little before. They also like separated it into like the splashes or whatever, and Boros is the least likely to splash. So So a Dimir deck with a Hypothesis that was just Grixis, and I didn't actually look at the 3 color breakdowns, but like some of them were Jeskai. I can only imagine most of those were. Is it splash blue instead of the other way around, or is it splashing white as opposed to Boros splashing blue? But yeah, so it was. I'm also curious, like a little misleading.
Yeah, I want to get into that data to figure it out, because there's also a chance that like it's much harder to get Boros, but it's also the one that with like a high ceiling, even though it's not on average that good.
It could just be the one that 3-0s and O's 3s the most or something.
Right, exactly, something like that. Anyway, Dan says, with 3 drafters seated in a row, ended up in subpar Boros decks. From my limited view, watching the coverage, this appeared because people noticed Boros was strong on day 1. How do you adjust to a very rapid, in this case overnight, changes to the metagame and let it inform your decisions when you sit down for day 2 of a draft? For a local gamer like me, this would be like my store's meta changing week to week. In other words, how do I integrate a heavily skewed most recent data point into my drafting decisions? And I'll add something to this question, Sigrist. Should you? Should you even be trying to adjust to that level?
No, I don't think you should be adjusting what you do. Just like if you're comfortable reading signals and doing that, then, you're just kind of getting in your own head if you're always thinking the person you write's drafting Boros because people did well with it before and you overheard someone likes it or something. I would just be comfortable reading the signals and, just look for those cards that send you that strong signal. Like if you're getting that fifth pick Skynet Legionnaire, then you got to be pretty sure Boros is open, right? So you can just stay in Boros or move into Boros or do whatever.
Yeah. But, I mean, it feels to me like the work that you've put up in the preparation leading up to the tournament is what you should be leaning on and not whatever happened to do well on the prior day or whatever.
Yeah. Especially in draft.
Yeah, for draft specifically. Brian says, love the show. Also a fan of Pro Points. Yay. And have almost forgiven Siggy for convincing me to go Golgari at GP New Jersey. Almost. Here's my question. I feel pretty comfortable with the Guilds draft environment. And I have a sealed PPTU coming up. So any hot tips for sealed specifically? What main differences should I keep in mind between Guilds draft and Guild sealed? Have you done any sealed, Siggy? Have you? I've
only done like maybe 10 of them. I like when they come out on Magic Online, that's the only thing that's available. So like I said, when it comes out, I dive right in. Even if it's only sealed, I'm going to play it. So I've done a little bit of it.
Okay. Do you have any? I mean, we usually do a sealed episode. We haven't got around to it yet, but we'll probably do it soon. So I don't know if you have any.
Blue's good in sealed.
Yeah, counter spells are even better in sealed because everyone's jamming the most powerful cards in their deck. Yeah, it's like you can splash as much as your gates let you. It's kind of the weird thing about this format is you're kind of just can only do what your gates will allow you to do. So the opportunities where I had like 2 gateway plazas and a variety of other lands, I went 5 color and I remember. Actually, specifically, I opened Chamber Sentry like 4 times in a row, and I just played 5 color. Yeah, I just played 5 color 4 times in a row, and I'm like, wow, this card is busted.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's clearly not as good in draft, but it is still strong. But it's not like it wasn't like in those decks where I could just always start bringing it back and casting it for 5 and stuff. But
right,
yeah. So just pay attention to your games.
Ryan says a lot of things in Magic can feel like an injustice. That's a hot start, Ryan. Mana Flood, Mana Screw, the least skilled member of your Pro Tour team is the one who top 8s.
That sounds oddly specific.
Yeah. It also says having to take a mulligan to 4, stuff like that. I find that new players, including me when I was new, can take these things pretty hard. It was helpful to me when my friends explained why these outcomes needed to be possible. What maybe you all can talk about why variance is part of what makes Magic such a great game. What do you think, Siggy?
I mean, variance is just part of the game, and you have to get used to it. It really sucks when it's like one of your more important matches and something like that happens. But
which that did happen to you, right? I mean, both of you guys have taken like horrendous beats in extremely high, high stakes scenarios for our game.
Yeah, I went one deeper than Luis in my Pro Tour finals game 5. I went to 3 cards.
You didn't stop at 4. Yeah.
No, I went to 3 cards. And yeah, I mean, it's like, if this game was chess, then it wouldn't be as fun for everyone. And I still have fun playing the game. And I like knowing that I can lose or win or whatever. And it's not just, I have to outsmart my opponent and I'm going to win every time. So variance is definitely important in making sure everyone can win. And, it's as professional players and skilled players, we just have to kind of grind out our edges, but also understand that it's just not enough sometimes. And that's fine.
I mean, yeah, it goes both ways. Like sometimes you're more prepared and your deck is better and you still lose. And sometimes you draft a bad deck, but you just like draw like a champ and you end up winning and it feels really good. Like I escaped the first pod with a 2-1 with my deck and my deck was not good. I posted it on Twitter, and I think when I finished at 2-1 with that deck, I felt like I had been handed a gift. And that was thanks to variance. I beat I played against 3 better decks, beat 2 of them. Mm-hmm. So, without that, it just wouldn't have happened. I also would definitely not compare yourself to other people. When I see the least skilled member of your pro team is the one who top 8s, that is not the sort of sentiment I think is very useful, because people who are worse than you are going to do better than you in tournaments. Well, so people who are better than you, like, it just doesn't really help to compare.
Yeah, it doesn't seem super relevant. This is a big hitter. David says, which is the superior podcast, limited resources or pro points? Well, Siggy, I think you're outnumbered here, buddy.
Well, I don't know about that. I remember, I can recall.
Here you are.
Well, no, I don't know about that. I can recall Luis on many occasions saying that Pro Points is the best podcast.
What? Luis, what are you doing?
I haven't said that. What I have said was Pro Points is the only podcast I listen to.
Wow, okay. What a traitor. Although it would be weird if you listened to our podcast.
Yeah. I'm not much of a
because you were already there.
A podcast fan exactly, but I definitely have listened to Pro Points on numerous occasions.
I do too. I listen to Pro Points as well. And it's weird. The reason I listen to it is because it feels like I'm hanging out with my friends. I just like I'm just like, I get to hang out with Sam and Siggy and Paul.
For me, it's similar, but more like acquaintances.
You're coworkers.
Coworkers, yeah.
Wait, so does that mean, Luis, that if you have to answer this question, you're going to vote for Pro Points podcast?
I didn't say that exactly.
No, you didn't say that. I'm kind of wondering what you're actually saying here, traitor.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll
Siggy, what do you think? Do you think that was Okay, we'll get some more people on.
They do have more people on their podcast than we do.
They do. They have 3, and we've only got 2. So that part makes it a little
we kind of only have 2, right? Paulo's only there like a third of the time or whatever.
Well, he's only there when he's not getting married. And by the way, we'll mention at the end of the show again is too, but Mike does have a podcast that we just mentioned. It's with Sam Black and Paulo Vitor-Damarosa, and they do it every week, and they talk about stuff that's relevant to pro players and stuff that's relevant to people that want to be a pro player. So if you if you want to try to improve your game, they'll talk about formats and deck building, but also about practical real life stuff when it comes to attending tournaments and getting to them and all that kind of stuff. You can check it out. Pro Points podcast. I'll put a link to it somehow. I don't. You guys have a where should I link them?
You can Twitter or Twitter's good.
Okay, I'll do that by the end, and I'll let you talk about that again at the end of the show too. A couple more questions here from our faithful listeners here. This one's from Anthony, who says, "Hey Mike, when you're trying to decide between 2 cards while drafting, if one of them's an uncommon and the other's a common, are you more likely to pick the uncommon because you may not see it again? Thanks."
That really depends on what the uncommon and common are doing for my deck, and like the diminishing returns for those cards. So if it's like a removal spell, if it's like Artful Takedown or Thought Erasure or something, I'm just going to take Artful Takedown because it's a better card, and I don't really mind if I have 5 of them. But if it's, a card that's not going to get better in multiples, like maybe a more expensive common, like a higher casting cost common, then, there's diminishing returns on that, and I'm just going to take the uncommon, or vice versa. I'm going to take the uncommon if, it's City Watch Sphinx and I don't want too many 6-drops, but, I'm probably not going to see another 6-drop as good as this one. So, I'll just take that. So I don't, you don't want to like really let the rarity dictate it, but you can, say like, I want one of these. I'll take the uncommon if that's exactly what you're looking for.
Okay. Did you go to the pre-release for Guilds, Siggy?
I have not been to a pre-release in a while, unfortunately.
Okay. I'm going to skip this next question because it's very specific to that. And if you didn't go, it really won't make a whole lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Next one says, "Hi, Siggy. Do you think Cube should ever make a return as a format to professional Magic?" And
definitely,
Joseph,
yes, 100%. Wait,
Joseph is referring to, what was it? The Players Championship? What was that?
Yeah, the Players Championship.
Yeah.
Players Championship in 2012. Yeah. It was one of the formats that the players actually played in a super high level tournament was Cube Draft, where it was one that was available on Magic Online, and there was a real life version of it put together by Wizards of the Coast, and they played it. And Luis wants to see it come back. Do you agree, Siggy?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, it's something that people at home really enjoy. You can just see that by how popular it is on Magic Online, and something they'd like to replicate. So, like, for instance, this last year at Worlds, we played, Dominaria Booster Draft. If it was Cube, people would have been excited about it. Dominaria, they kind of were over it at that point. So, Cube is something everyone loves. And the whole point of professional Magic at this point is to market the game. So why not give people what they love? I would love to play in a high stakes cube draft.
Do you love cube? Do you cube like in your spare time?
So I haven't in a while, but basically since the girls were born. But I used to. Mm-hmm. I used to when I had more free time. I loved it. I was very upset every time they took sneak attack out of the cube, though.
That was your thing.
Basically protested it ever since.
that coincided with you having 2 children at the same time. Yeah. Derek says, Siggy, you've gone on record as being a drafter who skews heavily in favor of decks that want to take over and win the late game, even so far as being against aggressive strategies and limited almost, it seems, as a matter of principle. How does taking the stance on limited interact with the good nuts and bolts drafting practices LR encourages when it comes down to it, and especially when there's good tournament finishes on the line? Do you tend to simplify draft in your seat the best you can, or would you rather actively stay away from specific colors or color pairs, Boros in Guilds of Ravnica, for example, and draft more closely to what you prefer playing? Siggy, how often do you, when it really matters, go aggro?
I will do whatever I believe will give me the highest percent chance to win. So I do draft aggro a fair amount, and I don't mind it. I just would prefer decks that can play a longer game and give me more choices, because the more choices I have, I feel like if I make better decisions than my opponents and, in a long game, I'll be more advantaged, as opposed to an aggressive deck where if I don't play a 2-drop into a 3-drop into a 4-drop, I'm going to be in trouble. So I just tend to draft those, more mid-range or controlling strategies when it's viable. For instance, something like Ixalan, it wasn't really something you could do all that well or that often. So I, always drafted aggro and Ixalan. I just want to, take whatever cards are going to give me the best chance to win. I just prefer playing longer games because I think a lot of the times that is what gives me the best chance to win.
I mean, in Constructed, for example, you played the whatever deck this weekend, right?
Yeah. I've done fairly well playing aggressive decks in Constructed, and it's a little bit different, but I don't mind playing aggressive decks at all. It's just I want it. If I can avoid the should I mulligan to a 2-drop with my Boros deck, or if I can avoid those kind of things, I usually will.
Okay. One last question comes from Josh, and I don't really know what to make of this question, so I'm going to let you answer it however you want, Siggy. It says, Mr. Sigrist, quick question. Pack 1, pick 1. Sorcery speed bomb or instant speed removal?
I would pick the bomb.
I don't know what that means, but you want the bomb, right?
Yes. Bombs are irreplaceable cards, and removal, you can always end up getting more. So I want to take as many high-powered cards as possible.
Speed agnostic. He wants the bomb. Easy one there for Sigrist. Okay. Well, why don't we wrap it up here? And first, I want to say thank you, Mike, for taking the time to come on the show. I know it got kind of late on the East Coast there, but we appreciate you staying up late with us and chatting a little limited.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Now, where can people find you, and tell us a little bit about the podcast? I just talked about it a few minutes ago, but it's relatively new still, and there might be a good chunk of our listeners that haven't heard about ProPoints yet.
Yeah, so you can find basically everything I do at channelfireball.com, and that includes the podcast. It's up there whenever it goes live, and the podcast is just me, Paulo, Vitor Damarosa, and Sam Black, and we just talk about we basically just come up with a topic and just start a discussion on it. It's kind of like going out to dinner with us or being in a car with us on a long road trip. That's kind of like how we steer it. So, it's ProPoints. So again, it's on channelfireball.com.
And where can people find you?
Me?
Me
personally.
What's your Twitter? Yeah, your Twitter.
At MCigrist83.
Mostly drafting blue.
Yeah.
Wherever blue is open.
In the competitive draft queues. With 12 blue cards.
But what's your Twitter handle?
At MCigrist83.
Okay, and I'll put that in the show notes as well for anybody that wants to give Mike a follow. And thanks again, Mike, for coming on. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall _LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the show at lrcast.com, and make sure you do check out #branding, channelfireball.com. And don't forget, trading in your cards. This is a big game at CFB because this is one of the ways that you can sort of keep the Magic ecosystem going for yourself. It's an expensive hobby, right? Getting booster packs or buying singles can add up pretty quickly. And one way that you can help offset that is by selling your cards back to Channel Fireball. If you sell them for store credit, they'll give you a 30% trade-in bonus, which is massive. And even if you don't want to do that, you can still just get cash and spend it however you please. So please check out our sponsor, Channel Fireball. We do appreciate their support of the show. That is going to do it for this one. Thanks again to Mike Sigrist for coming on. And Luis, thanks for braving it. I know that you're not feeling super well and you had quite a roller coaster of a weekend, but I was glad you were able to join Mike and I tonight. We will see everybody else next week.
So obviously I have to talk about the play, right?
You have to talk. We got 700 tweets saying, is this going to be the Genius or Grifter on the show this week?
So Mike, I do a segment called Genius or Grifter, and I'll let you be the guest judge tonight. It is as it sounds. I just basically talk about a play. It doesn't have to be in Magic, but this time it will be. And you say whether it's Genius or Grifter. Could also be something else. Sometimes it's neither. But this particular play may be one that you saw. This was when I was playing against Jeremy Dezani. This is game 3. I have the one copy of Settle the Wreckage, which I'll actually explain real quick why I even had that for those who weren't around.
So ridiculous.
So, Team Channel Fireball, we're all playing White Weedy Pro Tour, and we're going to play 4 Baffling Ends in our sideboard, just a 2-mana removal spell. We weren't thrilled about the 4th copy. That's kind of how it started. Because in most of the matchups we were bringing in the 4th copy, we were taking out Conclave Tribunal, which is a 4-mana Convoke version of basically the same card. And that's just a minor upgrade. It's not a major upgrade. So it didn't really seem worth a sideboard slap, but when you're basically a monocolor deck, you don't get that much out of your sideboard. At some point we were joking around and someone's like, someone should just play 1 Settle the Wreckage so everyone's scared of it the whole tournament. Because one of the disadvantages of being a big team and having a team deck is you get scouted pretty hard. If, one of our teammates, if Josh is in the feature match area in round 1 of Constructed and Settle the Wreckages, everyone else in the tournament's going to know about it. Or most people will. And we're like, we should high roll to see who has to play a Settle the Wreckage. And I don't know why. I was just like, whatever, I'll just do it. And because someone was like, yeah, you're the most likely to get featured. You should just do it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. So I had 3 Baffling Ends and 1 Settle the Wreckage in my deck.
And everybody else on your team had no Settle the Wreckage.
I was the only person registered to Settle the Wreckage of the 15 of us or whatever.
This is some deep strategy.
So then I'm playing with Jeremy Dezani. He's got a red-white aggressive deck with heroic reinforcements. He was truly Boros, a bunch of token making, go wide, Aurelia. And I sided in Settle, especially on the draw. I think it's good against him. But the problem with Settle is it can be kind of obvious. However, I had this game where it was it was the last card in my hand, and then I drew for my turn, so I only had 2 cards. He had just played Aurelia, and I passed back after rearranging my lands, so I had 3 lands in one pile, and Adonto, the first fort, in the other pile, which is, 2 white tap, make a 1/1 vampire. He untaps, casts Heroic Reinforcement, and then is deciding what to attack. He targets Aurelia with herself, so she's already a 4/5 vigilance. She's coming in. He's got the 2 tokens. He's got Adonto Vanguard. He's got a Sky Marcher Aspirant. He's just deciding what to attack with. And while he's doing this, I pick up a vampire token and I'm just kind of holding it as if I was going to be making a vampire token off Adonto. And then I never tap my mana. I never put it into play. I just kind of hold it above the battlefield as if I, kind of moving it around a little bit as if I'm deciding what I might be considering doing with it. At some point I put it back and then he takes it and picks it up. Once he picked it up, I knew it was over. Because once he picked it up and was looking at where it would go, correctly deduced that it wasn't going to be good for me if he attacked with everything, slammed with everything. He's like, okay, attack with everything. I'm deciding what to mentor. I'm like, okay, so you're attacking with everything and choosing what to mentor. He's like, yeah, I just threw the Settle on the battlefield and he conceded because he was just dead to the crackback. So, Siggy, I'll let Marshall weigh in also, but I want you to take first. Was that genius or was that grifter?
It was genius, and it only wouldn't have been genius if Dezani saw when you almost dropped the Settle on the table. Yes. Then you would have just looked like a fool.
Right. That was the other thing is the turn prior when I drew Dauntless Bodyguard, as I shuffled the cards in my hand, I goofed it up, and they started to spill over, and I just like snapped them back. There's some good clips of all this stuff. But he didn't see it clearly because he smashed with everything. But it was close. I tried not to look panicked or anything either.
He actually came up to me after the match, and he's like, "Yeah, people told me he dropped it. I didn't see it. I didn't see it." He was like aggravated. He didn't see it.
Yeah. So, but you have it as genius, not grifter, right? So
absolutely, definitely genius.
Definitely genius is where I was at. That was the most fun commentating moment I've had. Like that is immediately jumped into top 5, and I might just have it at number 1. I loved it. I saw it coming, so I got to set this narrative of like, okay, look at Luis's hand. He has drawn this stupid Settle the Wreckage that was there as like this ploy, to try to get people to play around it. And this is just like the most LSV thing ever, right? And now he's got to somehow try to get Dizani to attack into it. And then I see you separate. I called all this stuff out, by the way, that you separated out the Adanto's first port. And I'm like, look at what he's doing. And I'm like, and then you pick up a token. I'm like, come on, Louis. Like, and I mean, the truth is Dizani was in a tough spot. Either way, even if obviously if you showed him the settle, it's one thing, but he did need to kind of apply a lot of pressure after casting that heroic reinforcements. But then you got him, and it was like just kind of a poetic way after almost showing it to him too. But there was certainly nothing untoward about it.
No, I think if I tapped mana and like represented that I was making it and then took it back, that would be a different story. But
definitely, that would have been bad.
Okay, you want the honest truth here? I did not do that to increase my win percentage. I did that because I like the spectacle. I did that because
I knew you were just playing it up. I knew it.
I like making it. It's more fun for me, and it's got to be more interesting for people watching. I think Magic needs more of that, not less. So anyone who wants to act like a buffoon is all right in my book.
The real good news is that it was me in the booth, and I know you. So I'm looking for this stuff because this is subtle stuff, right? Like, if you don't play a ton of Magic, or if you don't know you might, overlook this. But I was all over it.
I was in the crowd, and I thought that the crowd was going to tip you off because they were just laughing hysterically the whole time. I literally stood up, jumped up, and said shh to the crowd watching because I just
awesome.
didn't want them to blow it.
It normally there's bigger differences or a bigger distance between the players and the crowd, and this time there wasn't, and that is actually kind of unfortunate.